starting this project. Seats out, fuel tank out, getting the dash out tomorrow. Fenders are off, grill's off. This cab's gonna lift up soon. I'm going on the white truck over there. She's ready for liftoff. Everything's disconnected from the cab. Dash is out. Just bare. Trying to get this thing out of here. Sick. Progress. Alright, so the project at hand today is I've removed the 2000 F250 body off of the frame and engine over here, and my plan is to put this 1975 cab on the 2000 F250. So it's a 7.3 liter with a ZF6. It's a 6-speed. I've always wanted to do this for a while now, and so I'm just in the process of doing it finally. I've seen some guys cut out the firewall in the newer truck and then weld it into the older truck, just because the doghouse is a little deeper than the original one was. And also, if you weld the newer truck into the older truck, everything is sort of bolts right up. I ran into some problems here. What I did not realize is that this side of the cab firewall is out farther than this side. It steps down. So that made things really confusing to try and weld this firewall into this cab. I ended up cutting off probably more than I wanted to and cutting it up more than I wanted to. I think if you were to do this again, that you would want to try and find areas of the cab that you could cut that were relatively flat and not so much curved, and also try and get a square cut and then weld it into this cab. I was going to do it in sections, and you can see right there, there's the step down right there too. And it also, even here, like this flat part of this side of the firewall is farther ahead than this flat part. So for me to put this firewall in is going to be a whole lot of cutting out small sections, welding them in, and just a big pain. Alright, so I'm just working on my 2000 F250 with the 1975 body on it. This is the rad support from the 1975. I'm just getting it ready because I want to run the 2000 F250 radiator. It also has the trans cooler on the bottom, so I'm going to try and stick with this radiator. It's quite a bit bigger though than what was on this 70s Ford. So what I've done so far is I've drilled out the spot welds of the old rad holder, and that gives me the width I need now. And so what I'm going to do is, here's the 2000 F250 rad support, and I'm going to cut the bottom off here at the appropriate length and then just weld it onto the 70s rad support on the bottom here. So basically this is where the frame is much wider on the 2000 F250, so this is where the cab mounts are going to be on the newer frame. This is where they were on the old frame. So I should be able to weld the bottom of that rad support onto this one. Alright, so I ended up building my own rad support at the bottom here. Just because the rad support on the 2000 F250 was kind of rotting out, so I just made one out of some C-channel, and that's where it's at. So I've just welded it onto the bottom, threw some paint on it, and I'm getting ready to put it on the truck. This is the crappy bottom rad mount I built. I had to cut a lot of it out. I suggest if you can reuse the one from the 2000 F250 and weld it onto the bottom of this one, that's a way better solution than doing what I just did. But it's done. Also had to cut a little bit of this bracket down here, the corner out, as you can see. But anyway, is what it is. It's not bad. Now I'll start by mounting the cab on. Alright, so a little update on the 75 Powerstroke. I've got the front radiator support sort of mounted up. The bolts, I'm using the mounts from the Powerstroke to mount the 75 radiator support. To get it kind of in the right position for what I found, I had to almost be right in line with the bracing here, so I plasma cut out a hole. I welded in a plate at the bottom, and that's how that's bolted down. Once it has the inner fenders bolted from the cab to here, it'll be pretty sturdy for sure. I did brand new water pump. Might as well do some of the maintenance while you're down there. I've got a Sinister diesel coolant filtration kit that's going on this truck also. One thing I did do is I bought the thermostat cap or cover for the 96 7.3 Powerstroke because of its extra length. The 2000 is right here, but I wanted the extra length because where the rad sits in here is a little bit farther, and so I kind of built my own rad bracing at the bottom. That's just how I did it. You could cut the factory one off the 2000 Powerstroke and weld it onto the bottom of here. Mine was kind of rotten, so I didn't go about it that way. Moving along, as you've seen in the previous video, I scribed in the firewall from the 2000 F250 into this 75 cab. That way, here I am running a 4-inch downpipe, which is perfect. If I left the stock firewall in with the 75, I'd probably have to run a hood stack, and I didn't really want to do that. I also am able now to bolt kind of everything up to this cab from the 2000 truck. There is a little bit of a gap here, but I'll fill that in with foam later, because now I have the climate control from the 2000 truck bolted in to the old cab. So that's working out kind of nicely. So if we go around to this side, I have the brake booster bolted up. I have the slave cylinder for the clutch pedal bolted up. Moving along there. And here's all the pedals bolted in. So we have our gas down there, the brake obviously, and then our clutch. I still have to build some bracing out. Another thing I've done is I'm running the 75 wiper blade system just because of how it works in this cab. I had to kind of cut sort of grooves and bend this bracket to fit in with the new firewall. So I've done that, and giving space for the wiper blade arm to be able to spin fully all around. That's working. I tested it out. This is the power cable for it. So I hooked power up to it and it works, which is great. Currently, I'm also working on, here's the 2000 dash. It's quite a bit bigger. What I did here is I pulled out all the wiring out of it, and I'm going to start. There's the whole harness, the whole dash harness right here. I'm going to start kind of setting up how I want that dash harness to fit. I'm going to figure that out. And as my defrost vents are here, I'm going to build sort of, I had to cut this a little bit just so this arm would have room. So I'm going to have a plate here, and then it'll feed the air into each defrost vent on this cab. I'm trying to run the 75 dash. I want to keep it looking like a 75. I don't want to run a plastic dash in here. So that's where I'm at. So I'm going to talk about the cab mounts here. So these are the front cab mounts from the 75 frame. I cut them off, I re-welded them on to this frame. I sort of guesstimated my height with some 2x4s on this frame and set up, and it's sitting perfect with that downpipe. I got the frame centered on the cab of on the frame of this new truck, and I did that for both sides. They're welded on, and I'm using the original 75 rubber mounts with some big washers underneath just to strengthen it. Going around to the back of the cab, if we go down here, again the original 75 rubber mounts. Since this frame is on an angle where it wants to sit, I built these little riser blocks just right off the frame, because this frame is wider than the 75 frame, so I didn't need to have mounts that come out. I just drilled new holes through this beam right here, or this bracing on this cab, because the original hole is literally right beside it, so there's no point in building cab mounts that come out and then having to try and make it work with that angle. So just build some riser blocks, put a bolt right through, you're done. And that's done on both sides. It works out great. This cab is solid, it's not going anywhere. The shifter is coming out of the bell housing perfectly. And again, if we go to the other side, the four-wheel drive is coming out the side here, and I am going to have to just cut a little more out, but this should work great with this handle now. Once I get that all set up, should screw right on there and almost look factory. So that's where I'm at, just to give you guys some hints if you're ever doing this yourself. This might save you some time since I'm figuring it all out, but there we go. I'll keep you updated. So we're back work on this F250, and I just want to talk about getting our defrost venting hooked up. So on this vintage cab, you see we only have these little slits here, so we're gonna have the heater core from the 2000 F250 in here, so we need to somehow mate that heater core with these defrost vents. So what I've done is I've created this thing. So using the top of the vent box here, as you can see, I took some part of an old oil jug. I had to cut this vent box down because the wipers would get in the way, the wiper arm would get in the way and hit this box. So I cut it down, and then I just screwed on this oil jug here to sort of finish it off. And then I cut hole in the top for the driver's side vent, and then a hole in the side here to come up for the passenger side vent. And these are, as you can see, shop vac nozzles. So I just cut the hole a little wider, and I sort of squeezed this and screwed in the ducting pipe here. This is 3-inch. As you can see, here's sort of the finished product. Once it's wrapped in, this is black Gorilla Tape. It's wrapped in black Gorilla Tape, and then the heat gun to kind of set everything. And so this one comes off on a bit of an angle. And so hopefully that will work out. I haven't tested it yet, but we'll see how it works once the truck's all built. Oh, and yeah, this is the original piece from the original heater core up to those vents. So I cut it up a bit. I was going to try and use it, but it didn't really work out. It didn't really fit anywhere, so I can't use that. So we'll try these out. All right, back working on the 75 F250 mounted on the 2000 F250 7.3 liter Powerstroke. And what I'm dealing with today is this steering shaft. I kept the 75 steering wheel and steering shaft. I wanted it to almost look factory. I didn't want that plastic steering wheel from the 2000s. So basically that meant I had to cut this end off the steering shaft for the 75 and weld it onto the steering shaft of the 2000 so that the 2000 end would still made up to the more modern steering box. But in doing that, I also had to cut quite a bit off. I had to shorten that a lot. And what that meant is I cut 5 inches off on this side, here to here 5 inches, and 9 inches off the slide portion of the steering shaft. Now on here, there was plastic sort of guides, and I had to grind the nubs off that hold the guides on and re-slide them onto the shaft, and then create new nubs just with my welder to hold the plastic slides in place so that they can fit inside of here. And now there is no play at all. It's nice and solid, and that's what you want. So that's what's involved in building a custom steering shaft to mate the two trucks together. Okay guys, back on the old 75 F250 here, and what I want to talk about is the rad and intercooler location. So as you see here, I've got my rad on the inside of the rad support. I use the 2000 F250 rad brackets at the top. I just cut and folded them here, screwed them on. That worked out nicely. In a previous video, I built a bracket on the bottom for the rad to hold the bottom of the rad using the 2000 F250 bottom rad mounts. Right there you can see. And then I welded that to the 75 rad support. So that holds the big Powerstroke rad. The thing's huge, but it does fit if you do it like that. Next challenge was the intercooler. The intercooler is also big on these trucks. As you can see, takes up a lot of this 75 grill. I had to do some trimming. So cut around there, cut all the tabs that hold the kidneys on the inside of the grill, cut those all off. But it fits that way. And as you can see, it's just got to be bolted together. It's ready to go. Now, with that grill removed, I just want to show you what I had to do to make this intercooler fit. This is off the 2000 F250. I cut the mounting tabs off that were welded to this intercooler, and I also had to cut and bang in just those corners right there on each side. You can see that, and that allows this intercooler to sit pretty nice against the 75 rad support. I've just got it held in by bungees right now, but as you can see, I've made my holes and it's going to almost line up factory. But the reason I do it this way is if I do want to put my AC in the future, I can extend this rad support out and put the AC in between the rad and the rad support. And as you can see, I got lots of room in front of the engine here for that. So that's the one reason I put the intercooler on the front and the outside instead of in there. But you do have to cut your grill up quite a bit to make it fit. Anyway, I'll carry on. It's got intercooler pipes. Just duct tape together right now, but I'm gonna get those welded right there at the duct tape seam. All new clamps, lovely. Not too shabby. This side, duct tape there, goes right in the intercooler, so not bad. All right, so here we are working on the blower box for the heater core. All that on these Powerstrokes is pretty big. Fortunately, to get it in, you got to do a lot of trimming. I've got my AC stuff off right now. I'm not running AC on this truck at the moment. I got it out of the way, I got it off. You can see mine was in a bit of a rough condition there. It was broken. Not worrying about AC right now, but as you can see, I've got the blower box fitted up. So keep in mind, I have the 2000 F250 firewall welded in to the 75 cab. One of the mistakes I did on the firewall that may make this a little harder for me and less hard for you is that I cut the 2000 firewall into 3 places. You can see here I welded it back together. I had to kind of bore out these holes a little wider than maybe they originally were. But needless to say, I'm getting it fitted in. Also, I noticed that the inner heater core didn't sit to the firewall as flush as it should have. That's why I have this tape in here kind of making up for that gap. Anyway, I'm working with what I have. I just want to show what needs to be done to fit this giant blower box on this smaller cab. First of all, I trimmed up this lip. I got this lip trimmed up about as much as I can. And then on the box side here, I had to cut out right here to get this to sit underneath. Later on, we'll be building a shroud and a vent into here to pull fresh air from the atmosphere and not your engine bay. You don't want your engine bay gases to be shooting inside your cab. Another trimming I had to do is this corner. Because we're dealing with a rounded corner here, I had to trim this corner up, but pretty tight too, but it's still there. It's still gonna hold something. The next thing I had to do is, if you look, I took this off on this side and I banged it in, as you can see. So I've got it cut out as much as I can here, just to give myself a little more room. But on this side, I had to trim quite a bit here and remove the screw that holds this top plate on. I'm gonna maybe put some small self-tappers along here later just to keep it all together, but that's what I had to do for now. Now, right here is usually bubbled out. What I did is heated it up with a heat gun and pressed it in with a hammer to dent it here, and that way it fits right alongside with this brace. So those are some of the things you'll have to do, and then you should be able to mount this up. So it's gonna take some finesse, some trimming, but once you get it, it's done, right? All right, so I'm just finishing up the last rear seat mount for the passenger side here, and I just kind of want to show what I ended up with. So I use this, it's 3" by 2" channel, and I actually cut the 2" side. I measured 1/2 inch from the inside, or 3/4 inch, sorry, from the inside down, and then cut the rest off, which then left me with this bottom plate. And so I sat the channel on top of here and tacked it with the bottom plate, as you can see, just to get the angle right. But my mount had to be this far back, so I just cut an angle out for this angle in the floor pan here. So that's ready to be welded in. I just got to check the positioning, and then I'll weld that in. I also want to show the full mount here for the center mount on this seat, and I plasma cut a hole in the top, and as you can see, I plasma cut a hole there. Instead of having this foot coming out and trying to make it work with this curve, I'll just bolt it straight in there and bolt it right there. So that's going to work out well. And again, you won't see this one, so who cares if it's plasma cut. But I'll just... All right, so I have the seat bracket off the seat, and I've plasma cut off about 1 inch. So now everything's going to get back welded on just like that. And then we'll be able to install it back on the truck. So this is where I'm at with the driver's side. So I have, again, that mount just tacked in there right now, just the same as the passenger side, the rear mount. And for the front here, I put a slice in here and I just hammered it down and got it to sit where I want it to sit. And so then I've tacked that at that exact bend, and I will weld that once I have the seat out of the truck again. And that'll almost look like it was meant to be there when I'm done. So yeah, it's coming along fine. It was kind of really time consuming to make this truck as comfortable as possible with what I have here. They're a smaller cab, and I'm a tall guy, like I said, so, but it's working out. There's lots of room now between the steering wheel and the seat here, and I can even also flip this seat up and it clears the steering wheel where this is sitting. So I believe for any of you who maybe are thinking of doing this, my rear seat mount is 3.5 inches from this bend in the body here. So measure 3.5 inches back, and that's where it is. All right, so just working on the wiring for the lights, the front of the truck. So you see I get the marker light, but obviously if you're running the vintage headlights, you're going to have to change the pigtail. So here I have a brand new pigtail for the 75 lights. I also cut the pigtail off for the marker light off the old harness. And this side of the truck, I have to extend the wiring just because of how the wiring harness ended up sitting in the body of the truck. This side had plenty of length to work with, but this side, I keep an old wiring harness around just so I can have different colors of wires to sort of try and match up where I have to extend. So example, my signal light here, I'll have to extend that, but I get the black brown wires on your light harness go to the black brown wires on the 75 pigtail for the marker light. So that's really straightforward. On the headlight, let me just use this light here. The headlight, you have a green, a blue, and a black. The black is ground, and your other two are power for high and low. So that's pretty straightforward. The center prong on your pigtail harness here for the 75 lights is your ground, and then you put the power on each side. So that's pretty straightforward. And yeah, that's all there is to it. The only thing you have to change is your headlight pigtail and add on the marker light. So yeah, hopefully that straightens things out for some people. Okay, so just finishing off the signal lights here. So this socket will fit into the 75 signal light, but the reason there are 90 degrees, so when you're trying to lock it into place, it doesn't have the room to really lock in place. So you do have to splice on the 75 style, which is straight instead. So I just bought these aftermarket, and so black goes to black, white goes to yellow, maybe used to be white, and red to brown, and that's how that's done. So once you have that, all your lights will work. All right, just getting close to my first startup on this thing. I've got my inner fenders in. I've got the computer sitting here, and I've got the fuse box sitting right here. They're not really fastened, but they're sitting in snug with the master brake cylinder. And the wiring's nice, like you can run it just like it did in the 2000 body. Run it along the top there. It's not too bad. Just cleaning up some of this wiring eventually. Coming under here, see, everything's plugged into the firewall. Nice like that. Again, I will tidy it up. The ABS block, I've just got it here for now. I want to get the truck together and the intercooler pipes in, and then that'll tell me that I can permanently mount it there. But I've just got it kind of tacked there for now. But as far as cutting out the inner fender, I had to cut it a bit here and a bit back there just to give me the access I needed to and stuff like that. I maybe could have left a little more than I have, but I will be putting like the plastic inner liner in, so that'll take care of all of that and protect that once that's in. But it's coming along. Degas bottle, I need to put the hood on to make sure I can mount it there before I do, or I'll have to come up with something else. But again, the wiring I have ran around here, and I have ran on this side of the blower box. And again, I do need to still clean all this up, but you know, I've got the starting solenoid here, ignition solenoid, just mounted in the actual factory spot that the 75 had its solenoid mounted, so that's kind of cool. But this inner fender, I did have to cut out quite a bit because this blower box is pretty big. So as you can see, I kind of had to cut a big section of it out. And unfortunately, there's not enough room to get the bottom bolt in on here. As you can see, I had to cut out a lot out. It's pretty tight. But I'm hoping that since I still have this square bend in here, it'll still provide the strength once the fender's mounted on for these big, huge hinges on the hood. So just mounting up the fender now, and I'm going to put some coolant in the truck and then see if it fires up. And I also added this Sinister diesel coolant filtration system. I had it there and might as well mount it now. All right, I am making a video because recently this thing broke down on me. I just went for my first drive with it and I got down the street, started losing power, and it didn't quite have the power it should have had. And I also had no gauges and it finally died. I had to get towed back, brought it back in the shop, and I'm just gonna make a video on some of the trials I've had because I got this running, but like I said, nothing on the dash, and it was kind of running pretty crappy. It sat for a while. I poured a whole can of seafoam in the oil and then revved the crap out of it, and the injectors freed up, I guess you could say. It's running good now, but oh, and another thing is my high beams and stuff my headlights were not working. And so, first of all, with the headlights, yes, you can, sorry, my switch is apart right now, but yes, you can hook up your lights on and off switch, but obviously you're not going to have a high beam without having the arm from the 2000 truck hooked up here and plugged in. And you actually won't have headlights unless you have this signal switch and high beam switch plugged in. And this is from the 2000 steering column. I just have it strapped to the 75 for now. In the future, I will be wiring it up to this one. But right now, I just want to get everything working. And so then I had to figure out, why did the truck die on me? And I realized I had no power to my fuel pump. My fuel pump on the frame rail on this truck was not coming on. And there was something I forgot in the old cab that I did not mount to this cab, and that was the inertia switch. This switch is in case of a rollover. If the truck rolls over, that pops and it cuts your fuel off. I didn't even have it plugged in, so therefore the truck just didn't complete the circuit to the fuel pump. So once I plugged that in and turned my key, I could hear the fuel pump come on and the truck fired up, but still no gauges. So I spent the next little while searching online, looking at wire diagrams, checking my connectors at the back. When I plugged my Bluetooth connector in, I could see that there's RPMs and stuff coming from the crank position sensor, but I was seeing no gauges at all. I had a wait to start light. I had all the other lights, but I had no gauges at all. And now you can see my fuel rising up. That is working. What it was is there was a missing ground. I had disconnected the whole rear side of the 2000 F250 wiring harness. So what I mean by that is the part of the harness that ran across the floor and fed the rear speakers, and the part of the harness that went across the headliner, and the harness that was inside the 2000 F250 doors. I had unplugged that because that unplugs right underneath the dash. But in doing that, it leaves out a vital ground that is needed to have your gauges working in this truck. So I'm gonna have to figure out how I can wire this ground in without having this huge harness hooked up. But I hope this helps you in case you're trying to do this swap and run into the same problems. All right, so here's what I did to resolve that ground issue. I left the harness for the rear speakers and doors and everything plugged in, but I found that the pink wire was the ground wire, and I just cut off everything and taped it up. And in the future, I can run my rear speakers off of here, but I'm not ready to install those. But I can just splice them on there. But this works for now. It's grounded out there, and I have all my gauges on my dash now.